everybody. Welcome to the Beauty of Pastel. I'm painting a scene from a local nearby state park canyon, and we're going to take that photo reference over there on the left, and we're going to bring some different color to it. I hope you enjoy. I'm using just a regular mechanical graphite pencil here. I grabbed it off my desk, and I am establishing the large shapes and lines in this piece. This reference came from nearby Paladuro Canyon. If you've never been, if you're in driving across the country, or if you're in the Southwest, please make sure you go and check out our beautiful state park nearby where I live. It's wonderful for those great canyon scenes we all love. Sketching in the main big tree shape in this reference, and also the reflection down in the water. Also the little grasses on the edge of the pond, river, whatever you want to call it. You'll notice that I'm holding the pencil at the very end. Instead of holding it traditionally like we would when we're writing with it, this makes the pencil almost like a paintbrush and creates looser and more organic lines. I picked up my favorite blue new pastel. This is, I think, the 244p color. It's wonderful for establishing those darks. I love to create an alcohol wash underpainting. That's where I'm headed right now, and kind of creating a little monochromatic, sort of. You'll see I'm going to add some color here in a second, but I love these shadow colors. It helps me cover up that paper so I don't have to work so hard in my soft pastel layers. Adding a little bit of ground color here with that soft peachy, kind of a gray peach. Our land is very clay soil here, and so those reddish hues really work well with whenever I'm planning on doing a more green landscape. I'm using a synthetic fan brush with the 91% rubbing alcohol I just got at my grocery store. Sweeping that reflection down into the water and then also horizontally creates really beautiful water reflections. Anything you're going to put up in your land, make sure you put down in your water too, because it reflects. So we want to put the same colors in our water that we're going to put in our landscape. Just melting that pastel into the paper, trying to get that oatmeal colored covered, adding some little definition to those distant trees, sweeping down once again. I picked up the new pastel to reestablish that little shoreline, and also to add some deeper darks to the base of the tree. The base of the tree gets the least light, and this reference was kind of on a gray, cloudy day. I'm going to probably change that a little bit whenever I'm putting the soft pastel on, but I want to make sure that the base of that tree is the correct darkness. The alcohol is actually still wet here, but the new pastel, they're so hard that you can use them over alcohol. It does apply a little bit differently, but then you can see me here. I'm just still using that little fan brush and working it in. I'm going to speed up here just so we can move on to the soft pastel layers. Adding a little bit of shadow in the clumps of grasses that I want to do on the side here. Filling in some holes in that tree where I really don't want the paper to show, or it to be a lot lighter. And I stepped back and I noticed that my reflection was kind of off and wasn't wide enough. So make sure you step back and always look, even in the underpainting stage. It's important. Picked up a soft purple for the distant canyon wall. A synthetic flat brush with alcohol. I didn't want the wispy effect that the fan brush brings, so I'm using this flat just to establish that little distant canyon wall. You'll notice that I don't want a halo around the tree, so really if you blend those distances into into the things around them. So there's not like a little white or a halo of color around your elements. Stepping back once again, adjusting all the time. I'm adjusting. Even if I do thumbnails, which I will show you the thumbnail. This was a pretty quick one. But I'm always adjusting. Okay, now we're starting with soft pastels. I am using a Terry Ludwig very deep blue. I love this color for over the new pastel. It's just a hair lighter, but creates a little bit of definition and depth. My philosophy for color, value, adding light and darks is I work from dark to light, like most people. And I also work from cool to warm. This really becomes such a rote habit for me that I don't really even have to think about what color I'm going to use, because I've done it so much that I know what color I'm going to use. And I know that especially if you're new to pastel, that is one of the hardest things to figure out is what color. I don't know what color. How do they know to pick up that color? That's where your daily painting practice is going to help you. That's where painting a lot is going to help you, because you know which colors work together. But the way I explain it to people is if you think of it as a stair step, if you think of it as a ladder of value. So we're starting on the bottom rung, which is going to be the darkest color. Move up to the second rung. That's going to be usually what I do is I usually do the same hue but a little lighter value, and then I gradually add light. And what I mean by that is I add warmth as I go all the way up to the very top, which is when I'm, the very, very warmest is obviously oranges and reds and yellows. But I wouldn't add those in at the base of a tree, because there's not light at the base of a tree normally. Now, of course, rules are made to be broken, and I have added reds to trees, especially if it's in the fall or autumn. But you can see what I've done is I've worked from blues to a cool green to a warm dark green, then to a very light, very, very warm green at the top. And then I added some greens over down into the water, and also over to the left of this bushy, scrubby, it's actually a juniper tree. And yes, I will work with rubbing alcohol throughout the painting. I will re-wet things. I will use that fan brush. I'll use sponges. I use all kinds of little tools. Anything that I can pick up that's going to help me have a successful painting, I'm going to use it. There's nobody in my studio but me, and nobody can tell me what to do. And that's a really good thing to remember when you're in your own painting process. It's just you and your paper. Make it work for you. Do what you want to do. If you have an idea of something that might work, that would help you, then utilize it, and you might create a whole technique for yourself that just helps you create more successful paintings all the time. Now, how I tackle very green landscapes is just very gradually. I use an incredibly light touch to tap the paper, almost in an X formation. I'm holding it very gently, the pastels very gently between my fingers, and really using not the tips of them, but at least at this point, I will use the tips if I'm trying to make little dots of flowers or seed heads glowing in the afternoon sun. But I'm really using more of just the side of the pastel, pressing and flicking downwards to just get a gentle grazing of pastel onto this sanded paper. The sanded paper really grips pastel very well, And so I don't have to push very hard to get it to stick. I've added some different greens to the tree, and also I'm just kind of working slowly on establishing little tufts of grass on the edge of the water, and also that distant yellow field behind the tree. These are pretty neutral colors that I've used so far. I haven't used anything very vibrant. Most of them are grade versions of the purer hues. I added a little bit of distant golden field instead of what is seen in the reference photo. I wanted to create a little bit more distance between this tree and the distant canyon wall. And so what you see in the reference photo is a little different than what I'm deciding to do here. I often do that because I really love to paint more of a vista. Things that are very up close and all things tight together tend to make me feel like the painting is a little claustrophobic. And so I like to create air around the elements within my painting. I'm adding a little bit of really bright coral to the sky. I often do this, especially if I want a blue sky, because it just creates a beautiful soft glow. And right now I am kind of cleaning my brush on the side of that foam core support that I'm using. I'm using the same alcohol that I used for all the blues. And I'm a thrifty gal, and I don't like to throw things out. And so I didn't want to throw out the alcohol. So I just wanted to kind of clean the brush a little bit. If you've let the alcohol sit in the cup or whatever, or the dish that you're using, the pastel will actually settle down into the bottom, and then the more clear alcohol will be at the top of the container, just for your information. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I like to add touches of similar colors all over my painting, especially from the sky into the distance into the foreground. So you can see that I used that purple in the distant land, the distant canyon wall, and I wanted to add a little purple touches into the base of the tree and like little grasses sticking up around it, just to kind of bring them together. That's a really great way to add color harmony to your paintings, is to add touches, even if it's not the exact same pastel, if it's a similar tone, a similar hue, to add it around your piece, so that way the foreground and the distance that you are creating will go together. Layering on and scumbling on some very pale turquoise, very pale, very pinky violet, there at the kind of the horizon line, I guess you would call it, of the distant canyon wall up on top. Using the underpainting I'm not covering it up all the way because I really want that really beautiful orange peachy color to peek through. Makes more vibrant sky. I'm going to speed it up here a little bit just so we can keep moving on with the water. Adding just some violets, turquoises, just scumbling them in together. Also just some little golden clouds up there in the sky. I want this to be a really soft day. I loved that orange underpainting, and maybe if I did this again, I might even keep it as an orange sky, just because it was so vibrant. But I wanted this to be a little quieter piece, kind of a moody piece, and adding some blues in there just to create some shadow in that distant canyon wall. I don't want to do a lot of detail, so just little touches, like little, just use the side of your pastel, create little ridges in that canyon wall. At this point, I'm really not looking at the reference anymore. I haven't even thought about it at this point. The only thing that I need a reference for is for the major shapes. That is really what I look for in any painting that I do, is what is the shape of the elements, and is it pleasing? Would it make a pleasing composition? I'm beginning to bring some blues down into the water to reflect the sky above. If I had chosen to do an orange sky, then I would bring orange down into the water because, of course, the water is reflecting what's above it. Started off with a lighter ultramarine and cobalts, and I'm working my way down into the water with darker colors. I like for the base of my paintings to be a little bit darker than they might appear in the reference, and so I use darker blues as the water goes towards the viewer. I feel like this greets them a little bit more and invites them into the painting, back into the reflections. Using a little harder marks here. I don't have a lot of underpainting in that area of the water, and so I'm pushing a little harder, blending some with my fingertips just to cover that oatmeal color of the paper a little bit. Usually whenever I'm blending on water, I like to blend down vertically and horizontally. That helps with that sense of water reflection. At this point, I wanted to re-establish some of the shadow from the tree. I felt like what I have in the water doesn't quite depict what's going on above the water, and so I'm just taking out my brush and some thin alcohol and brush it back in. That helps reveal a little bit of tooth, so you can then start reapplying and adjusting your shapes a little bit. This is just all about evaluating, adjusting all the time, making sure you're stepping back from your painting, looking at it with a critique and a critical eye to see how it can be changed or improved, or if there's something in it that doesn't quite make sense. Adding some little touches. I want to layer the color without completely covering the color underneath. Scumbling it on, bringing some of those greens down into the water, just so the painting is cohesive. You can see when I sweep across those lighter colors onto those darker values, it just creates water. It's just magical. Adding some darker blues. When I first started this painting, there was a little triangular area of grasses that you can see in the reference, and I had thought about putting those in, and I had made some marks intending to do so, but as I've been painting, I just decided to take it out. I liked the entrance of the water to be the primary foreground element. I'm taking my time here, adding some warm greens into the water reflection since that side of the tree also has warm green in it. Taking my fan brush up again. I love that fan brush. Creating some little twigs and bushes and grasses on the edge. Whatever I put onto the surface of the land, I'm also in the opposite direction, angularly, putting it in the water because that's how water reflects. It's important to note that alcohol, though it looks darker when it is wet, obviously, it dries generally in the same tones and hues that you've put down, so no need to worry about any darkening effect. You can see here that it all dried and you can't even tell. Adding some, this is actually a Townsend pastel that I love. They have this beautiful gritty pumicey quality to them, and they cover really well. And also starting to add some orange dirt, earth to the edges of the shoreline. Right there, I'm creating a little, not a sky hole necessarily, but just some space in that tree. And I soften the edges a little bit just because I don't want that light to sit on top of the tree. I want it to be behind the tree. And so when you soften those edges, it reads so much better. Adding in some grasses and just along the shoreline, sweeping it back down into the water once again. Always make sure whatever goes up goes down. This is actually straight black charcoal. I really wanted to add a lot of punch to that shadow at the base of that tree, and I thought it needed a little bit more contrast. Also adding just some little dots and squiggly lines along that shore. This is some more of that yummy green, very, very warm green Terry Ludwig up at the top of that tree, just catching that light. Those are some pretty direct little marks. Using more of the tip of the pastel right there just to create those tiny little leaves. This is an ultramarine. I believe this is a Rembrandt. It's great for distant trees. Also going to use the same pastel to create some little branches and twigs within that main tree. It's the same concept that I talked about earlier with using the same pastels, or even the same family of pastels throughout your painting, and that way everything blends together. It makes sense when you look at it. Nothing is too jarring or out of place. Using really light touches, being very deliberate here as I am approaching the ending of the piece. Continuing to add character to the water, adding in those warm, warm greens that I put in the tree earlier. Remember, what goes up must come down, so that especially applies when you're painting water and water reflections in the landscape. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. If you did, please give this a like. I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and hit that little notification bell so you can be notified when I have a new video. I also have support levels over on Patreon. If you would like this free content to keep coming out, you can visit my Patreon channel at patreon.com/Bethany Fields. All the links are in the description. Thank you guys. See you soon.